My Inner Knowing, empowering you to find your compass for the journey. We are dedicated to supporting you to rediscover and trust your natural ability to navigate life each day by sharing insight and experience through the lens of two professional communicators and their guests. We intend to prompt internal inquiry that supports all those willing to explore a unique path.
Well, hello.
Hi there.
How are you?
I'm great. I'm having a hard day. I mean, yesterday started off well.
Yeah.
Today did not.
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
the roller coaster of life.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So today we were going to talk about relationships with our family.
Mm-hmm.
Different than the one we did about the roles we play in our family. And so when I was thinking about talking about this, topic today, what came to mind for me was when I think about, so I am one of 8 children. I am the 5th of 8. My 3rd oldest sister passed away as an infant from a heart condition that they, I think, could fix now, but they couldn't 60 years ago. And so 7 of us raised in a home with 2 parents who are still married. They are 82 and 84. And we may have talked about this a little bit on another episode, but I feel like my parents in the last few years have developed a relationship that I've never witnessed prior.
Yeah.
And so it's really lovely.
It is. And for them to find that far along, is gives a lot of hope for growth and I don't know, partnership.
Yeah. Well, no doubt they both still had to release stories that they had been carrying for 75 plus years, right?
Yeah.
So to me, it's never too late to release whatever story is getting in our way from having more connection. I think we can tell ourselves that it can get too late. I'll have people come in their mid-50s. It's too late for me. And I'm like, whoo, you have no idea. You've got 30, 40 years left.
Well, and it can happen in 5 years too,
right.
or 3 years or less. It just all depends. And then, if you just throw your hands up, well, you've guaranteed what the outcome will be.
Right.
More of the same.
Yeah.
Right.
So putting effort in, no matter your age. Yeah.
Mm.
So when I think about, how different we are, there's 18 years between my oldest sibling and my youngest sibling. And so, my oldest sibling wasn't even around when my youngest sibling was growing up. So there is no relationship there. And that's because she left for college and then never has lived back here. So it wasn't like, we just didn't see her that often.
Yeah.
We didn't have the money for her to come home regularly, on breaks and stuff. And so as best as I remember, we didn't see her that often, once she left. And so that relationship is different just because she hasn't been around for however long that's been, a really long time, 40 some years. And then the rest of my siblings have mostly lived here. And then I have one sibling that I don't think we have seen for 7 years. Mostly 7 years. It's hard. I mean, I don't think I've seen her for 7 years. I think some of my siblings may have saw her 5 years ago. And so I think about relationships with family and just how, different each one of them is. who I am, who they are, how we walk in the world, what we want in relationship, what our traumas have been, what our, maybe our intimate partner relationships are. I mean, I think there's so many things that go into what our relationship with our family is. It's really complex. I think our family has matured. I mean, it was really kind of funny over the weekend. We were celebrating birthdays. We get together once a month. And there weren't a ton of us there this last week. And my mom, it was really sweet. She said, we are a small group, but we are mighty.
Aww.
I was like, I really liked that.
Yeah. She's a great matriarch.
She is.
She really works hard to be the glue, to bring everybody together at her house, even though she's 82.
She'll be 83 next month.
And it's nice to see, she just does her best.
She does.
And I love the saying.
Yeah. And she is a mom who gives us a lot of space to be who we are, to make our choices. It's not that she doesn't have opinions that she gives you every now and then, but it is not, it's not overpowering. It's not, in my experience, shaming. Maybe some a little bit, but not much. I just don't feel like I experienced that much. My parents are like loving grandparents, but they aren't ones who, I think my mom spent quite a bit of time with the oldest grandson, like out of need. But my mom worked. While most of us were growing up. My children were growing up. My mom was still working. And so, not a regular over at the house taking care of the kids experience. So.
Is that regular?
I don't know. I see it, in families, but not... like some grandparents are with their kids every day.
Yeah.
Their grandkids every day. Or they're with their, every weekend. And, we might do it once a month, get together, sometimes twice. Depends on if there's an specific event going on.
What do you think changed for her to be so more involved with the oldest grandchild?
Oh, I think that was like the dynamics of his parents' situation. Like, I think, I think they needed a lot of support. And so I think it would be an interesting conversation to have with her.
Sure.
For sure.
Yeah. I guess without her, we don't really know.
Yeah.
Where I immediately went with it was, first grandchild, just the wonder and excitement about that was like, ooh, I'm all in that.
Oh, no, I don't. I'm not saying that wasn't there. I'm not saying that wasn't there, but.
No, there's 15.
Right.
I can't do that. Or whatever. I don't know how many grandchildren there are.
I don't know either. I'd have to count them up. But no, I don't think that was it for her. My mom is not, she's really very hands off. And I have been too, to a degree. I've actually had to work on learning how to be a little bit more engaged with my kids. I think my mom was just overwhelmed with, losing a child, raising 7 children, the financial aspect of raising 7 children. So 9 people in the home. It's a lot to manage and feed and clothe and just all of it. I think my parents were just really overwhelmed, but also, living the life that they thought they were supposed to be living.
Right.
And so I understand. you know, that balance. And I can see the amount of, effort that they put in to trying to do it as well as they could. Not all of it was great. But I think we all learned to work, hard. We all, I think, are very hard workers.
Yes.
But I do think it was overwhelming. So I think we raised each other more than my parents raised us.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that was great. But in regards to just the, having, let's see, someone who's 14 years old be your primary caregiver, I don't know that would have been great when I was a little person. So I remember there being a lot of stress and a lot of fighting. Our oldest sister really, I don't think, knowing what to do with us. And so how do you, control little kids who are just, running around doing whatever. So it was pretty messy. It was messy. So for me as a parent, being hands off felt normal because that's what I knew. Mm-hmm. And then as my kids continued to age is when I realized that they needed more, and they wanted more. And I had to really learn, and we've talked about this in different episodes, who each one of my kids was and what they needed from me. And I'm still learning that. What?
Well, they're all changing, so
Yeah.
you do have to stay up with the news, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not just the news, but, what lies under that.
Yeah. But I think about even, I don't think we did things with my mom other than when they were a necessity. Mm-hmm. And so even yesterday, my youngest child and I were at a doctor's appointment, and she was telling me about some clothing that had ripped, and she wanted to try to fix it creatively. And for me, even suggesting let's go to Joann's and find some fabric, is, not something that I would do. Let's go hang out in a fabric store for an hour and a half and wander around. And it was great, but it's not where my brain goes. I think my brain, if I'm in the middle of doing things that are a necessity, getting my brain to shift into just wandering around a store, which isn't something I normally do for myself.
Yeah, you're not a shopper.
I'm not a shopper. Right. So, and we had a great time,
That's
and
nice.
spent a lot more money than I thought that I would, because then once I got in there, then I found some fabric I really liked. Anyway, yeah. I digress. Anyway,
Not
it
really.
was, so for me, learning relationships with, my siblings, is effort as well. Even when we were playing at my mom's on Sunday. And I mean, my niece is getting married next month, and my mom had gone out to find some dresses to wear, and she wanted feedback on which of the dresses. And then she had ordered one too. So there were two that she had purchased and then one. And we went in, her bedroom, which is not something we normally do. And we were all trying on all the dresses, and so there were 3 of us daughters and my mom in there trying on dresses, and we're all evaluating hair color and skin color and the color of the dress and what looks best on, which person. And anyway, it was sweet and fun. But that isn't our normal relationship to play like that. But it was a lot of fun, and it would be fun to do more of that. And we've taken my parents on some trips the last few years, which has been fun as well. But in my family, we get along, we're kind to each other. But I would say, we have a certain level of curiosity with each other, but we're also very efficient. I mean, I think there's like a certain amount of efficiency
Sure.
that we learned in relationship. And so I can just see that. And I keep working on stepping out of that, but knowing that that is still there. So what are you thinking about your own family as I'm...
Well, I'm thinking about your family.
Yeah, okay, go ahead.
Well, it's really, I love the picture of you in there, doing, everybody trying on the dress and having that time together, and being able to let go of the analytical, really, and just play together. And it's touching. And it made me, want to encourage you to look for more ways that could happen, especially while your mom is still around, but even after, because they're, your family is lovely.
Yeah.
Everybody's busy, raising their kids still and all of that, but it's really nice to see.
Thanks, babe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but also seeing, are you telling me not to tap the table? Was I about to tap it?
No. I was just putting my hand on your leg.
Woo, woo. Thank you.
You're welcome.
It's nice to see you too. Anyway, it's a nice thing to see, and I hope that you guys find a way to make similar experiences happen more. Then it's just we've all gone to all this effort mentally to get together at a location or whatever, and then it is what it is, and everyone's so busy that you girls don't have the opportunity, women, but girls in that setting, I think, is okay, having that opportunity to really connect like that in a fun way.
Yeah. We played dress up growing up all the time. We had a box full of really cool things. Who knows? My mom may still have it. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it was fun. Yeah.
You were asking me about my family experience, and it's very different from yours. I mean, we didn't have a parent that really pulled everybody together. My dad had been an only child, and with his parents, they were, they were, I don't know, 6 hours away or something like that, 4, 5, 6 hours away. And they were very interested, but there was no Zoom, there was no chat, there was none of that. It was just the telephone back then. And so I would say that they were very influential in who I became, or parts of me. And they loved us, but they weren't close enough to be there all the time. And it wasn't, they weren't stepping in, right?
Right.
But it's interesting, as an only child, I think my dad was jealous.
Sure.
Still wanted to be the only one.
Sure.
And so, and they were critical of his life choices, etc. Divorced and married 4 times, and in between, just out doing things, and they didn't appreciate that. They thought he was reckless.
Yeah.
And irresponsible with money. Money was a big deal to my grandfather because he grew up with nothing through the Depression, all that stuff.
Right.
As a young man in the Depression. But in any event, what would he have been? Early 30s. So, anyway, we didn't have a leader.
Yeah.
And then because both parents got married 4 times, there were multiple, siblings from other marriages.
Yeah.
And it just, nobody ever pulled that all together. So I haven't had that experience. So, but, so the closest I can approximate is just relationship with my sisters, the original, because we were the first of all of the siblings, the original 4.
Yeah.
Born earliest, whatever, the oldest.
The oldest 4, right.
Yeah. and so, yeah, I think my next youngest, the next sibling is like 6 years younger than me.
Yeah,
So
okay.
then it just goes down from there. So anyway, there wasn't a lot of guidance. There was kind of some conflict about who was more important to the grandparents that were involved. Because my mom's grandparents, they loved us, and we had a nice time. We went to see them, but we didn't hear in between times. So how do you walk the dynamics of those relationships? And they're all gone now.
Yeah.
Other than my siblings are all here still.
Yeah.
So parents, grandparents, all deceased for a long time. So there's no way to go back and retread ground, to try to have those experiences we're talking about, trying to create opportunity for connection as adults, right? But there is with my existing siblings. We're navigating, who are we now since we've been apart for so many years?
Yeah.
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 And it's of those, I was the last at home because I was the youngest of the first four, and the rest of my siblings didn't live. It was split up, all living in different places, and so it was. It's interesting to look back and see as the youngest what the oldest. This was an interesting dynamic because she was placed in a position, and I think it happened a lot back then.
Yeah.
Similar
It
to
may
your
still.
family too,
Yeah.
and it may still. I don't know. I'm way past that, but there were absentee parents basically, and so she had to take on that role, and that's a lot. And I think we could see that sort of in your oldest sister too. It's so much, and I don't know. It just creates a different dynamic. But what I know is we all have become people that the others don't. We know each other. We see parts of each other through cards and calls and that sort of thing, but we're not together enough to really know each other. And my hope is that somehow becomes different. Maybe it never does. What do you think?
I think it can. I think that about 6 years ago, 7 years ago, I can't remember exactly, I invited all of my siblings to come to my house for the weekend, a Friday night, a Saturday, and a Sunday. And the goal of that was for us to take turns telling our story for as much as we wanted to tell, ideally starting from when we were a child to who we are now. And no one could interrupt each other. No one could challenge anybody's story. It was really just about spending that time being with each other and gaining, awareness and perspective and compassion, for ourselves. Because we didn't all go through the same thing, even though we were in the same house.
Right.
And, as well as we get along and, connect and spend time with each other, the reality we started with the oldest and went to the youngest. And, we made food together for breaks and, took breaks and spent some time outside talking. I mean, we kind of mixed it up over the weekend. What was most shocking was when my oldest sister started telling her story of her life. And as much as we know each other and as well as we get along, we had no idea. We had no idea what was going on in her adult life. None.
Right.
None. And I remember her sitting there, and she had typed out notes or something. And I just remember her sitting there and she had her laptop open and she was shaking, as she was, reading her story. And I think we all heard her to some degree. I'm not saying that some people didn't dissociate, but I just remember sitting there thinking, how did we not know? How did we not know?
Yeah.
As much as we talk, as well as we get along, how did we not know? And when she finished, we all needed a break, took a break. And I remember my sister that was going next saying, remind me why we're doing this. And I said, because we don't know who each other is. We think we do, but we really don't know. And so for me, it's creating the space for it, and the willingness to step in and hear however many siblings' perspectives you have and not challenge them. Can you allow them to have had their experience, even if it was completely different than yours,
Right.
and for that to be okay? Can you accept someone else's experience?
Right.
Even if you were there when certain things happened. Can you allow it? Can you allow your story to have more information put into it? So I do think so. I just don't know that we create opportunity. And even if we do go out with our siblings, are we, with just your siblings, are you creating the space for it? Do you create structure around it? I mean, 'cause
Right.
that was one of the things that I did. And I didn't play the role of therapist. It was really more like, okay, remember, we're not talking, right? Like we're just sitting here, And I think just some people, and it wasn't that people were, in this case, trying to change anybody's stories. They were just so surprised at so much that was shared.
Well, and don't you think there's some resistance to the shock of it?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it was
Of whatever the experience was. And also just their experience within the family too can be shocking
yeah. Yes.
and hard to hear.
Yeah.
If your experience was vastly different, right? So how do you help people get past that type of reaction? That's the question. But anyway, I kind of digressed you.
No, it's
Sorry.
okay. It's okay. No, you were just asking, can it be different? And I'm like, yeah, I think it can be. I think that was a huge, shift for us as a sibling group
Yeah.
to see each other and to learn more about how we walk in the world, how we see things, our struggles, our story, what we're carrying. Yeah.
Was it hard for you not to step into the therapist
No.
role?
No.
How did you keep yourself from doing it?
Just being present. I mean, really, just being present. Like I really wanted to hear.
Right.
I really want to know who my siblings are,
Right.
not just the stories that I have created about them over 54 years, right?
Yeah, and it's what's striking me is just if people want to try that sort of thing, they don't have to be a therapist to do it.
No, they just all have to be willing to agree. Again, we're all in this space, giving ourselves plenty of time. That's why we did a Friday night, Saturday, Sunday.
Right.
And then, once somebody starts sharing, they've got the floor.
They've got the talking
They've
stick.
got the talking
Yeah.
stick.
Yeah.
Nobody else gets to speak. And again, no challenging afterwards, no facial expressions or eye rolls or sighing.
That's asking a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you're really there to hear them. It's not about you.
Right.
Whoever is speaking, it's not about you. It's about them.
Right.
Yeah.
I guess providing some guidelines, just and they're simple, maybe 5.
Yeah. Very simple.
So you don't have to have a therapist present to be able to try to work your way through it, but people might have an emotional reaction. They can just see the eye roll piece or, just because it becomes about the listener, right?
Well, yeah, that's the work, right? It's not that you're not going to have your experience. It's just don't make your experience the focus,
Right.
right? So you can have your experience. You're going to have your experience, but not to take from the person who's sharing. And I know some family systems can't do that. I mean, I work with families We'll have, I don't know, 6, 7, 8, 9 people in a room, and in that regard, I'm modeling more
Yeah.
about how to hold space. I am facilitating. It's a more directive perspective when I'm working with the family, but also teaching them, how to hold space for each other. But one of the things that comes to mind is the roles that we play in our family, which we've talked about, are so strong. So it is not going to be surprising if you attempt this, that you all initially at least start in your role. And so for me, that's part of the time and the space. And, again, initially, are you all willing, truly willing to be seen? Are you willing to release the role so that your family can know who you are? It may take 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times. I don't know.
Sure.
I just think that I don't know. I think our family, our siblings over time, I think a lot of us have done a lot of personal work. And so I think we were really successful the first time. It doesn't mean we couldn't do it again. I'm sure there'd be more
Sure.
that would come out.
I think having done, personal work, meaning therapy or reading, whatever it is, to expand your understanding of how you operate
Awareness.
or walk in the world is helpful. But because I could see, well, let's talk about our feelings. And I was like, tell me what really happened, I think that initial resistance can be there. But what I know is, at some level, if they're willing to get together, most siblings, there's some, seed of love there still. And maybe there's a whole bunch, but it's just buried or it's right out there. It just all depends on the family dynamics. But if, if nobody's started doing their work or anything like that, what I think is there could be initial resistance, but just sticking with that process and those, call it the 5 guidelines, and it may be the 4 guidelines. So we'll have to formalize that, I think, for how you might do this sort of thing. And I think if you stick with it, if people start, it may feel awkward and weird at first if you're talking about how you felt about something, whatever. But your story is your story, and maybe it's all analytical because that's the safest place to be. Just this happened, then this happened, then this happened, then this happened, then this happened. But in that process, I think there could be some loosening up, especially if people are working hard not to reveal or have their judgmental reaction take over, right? And make it about their experience versus the speaker.
Right.
So what I'm trying to do is help give a framework for a whole range of people who might be interested in doing this. Fascinating. Didn't see the conversation go into this. I've talked a lot, but let me ask you this question. How do you think your relationships with your siblings changed after that weekend?
Oh, I think we were closer. More connected, more compassionate. And I think it's been like a continuing evolution. I think it was gradual. I think when you're that vulnerable, when often in those relationships you're playing a role, then it can be a lot of fear of, oh, I shouldn't have told them that.
Yeah. Sure.
They're going to reject me or judge me or whatever. And so I would guess everybody worked through that process of it. But I don't think anybody abandoned each other after that. I think ultimately it did, bring us closer. Like we can share really hard things that happened in our life, and we could hold space for each other. But I still think the integration of it's still happening all these years later.
The girl time, trying on the dresses in a joyful way, I think is the fruit 7 years later after that meeting.
Yeah.
And maybe that started it. It was the planting of the seed. Lovely. I like to think of it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like everything, family is complex.
It is.
And not everybody has siblings. And these are conversations I've had with, parents and a single child as well. They're just hard conversations. We carry so much story about how we remember things and how we value things, that it can be difficult for us to be open to more perspective. I'm not saying that that's bad. I think being open to multiple perspectives is actually one of the healthiest things we can do. I just know that it's hard. It's hard. Our brain struggles with the both and. It can be this and it can be that.
All at the same time.
All at the same time.
As opposed to...
My story's the right story. I remember it right. My memory's better, right? Whatever. I mean, whatever those stories are. Yeah. Yeah. I was older than you when that happened. Of course I remember better. Whatever. It doesn't matter. There's a lot of things that can get in the way.
So if you engage in one of these sessions with siblings or parents even, and everybody has their chance to talk, and there's going to be a few spots where somebody rolls their eyes and it's like, okay, we need to take a break or whatever it is.
Yep.
And come back. Remember the guidelines, the 4 or 5 guidelines.
Yeah.
And everybody manages to get through. And it goes reasonably well, at least while you're in it.
Right.
And then somebody got their feelings hurt in the process.
Sure.
What's the best way for, and there may not be a best way. It may depend just on all the dynamics involved. But what's a way to approach that piece?
Whoever has the most space, that's the most grounded, just go hug them or sit next to them. Just don't abandon them.
Right.
Yeah. Ask them, can I just hold your hand?
What if it's 2 weeks later?
Same. Get together.
What's the, how does that help versus another approach would be, we need to talk.
Just connection, just safety, allowing people to work through it. I mean, open the door. I mean, if there's more conversation that somebody wants to have, but I would say don't avoid it. Because this time isn't about discussion. It really is just sharing.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. It's inevitable. I'm sure we all got our feelings hurt at some point. Yeah.
Sure. I mean, and it could just be the result of it challenging your story, your recollection.
Right.
Right.
Right. And we don't like that.
Yeah. Scary.
Right. Scary. Right. What does that mean if I allow that story to be possible too?
Interesting.
Yeah.
Something came to mind when we were going through that about my dad. He would, and this is a couple years before he died. I mean, maybe in that 5-year period, when I was trying to go see him frequently, he would say things like, you didn't have a very happy childhood, but he was clueless and not curious about it.
Right.
He was like, my childhood was great. Because he was like the only child and the only grandchild, so
Right.
everybody doted on him, is the
Right.
story. Now, I wasn't there, so, but in any
Right.
event, I take it was true. And so, and over time he would just say, you're just so serious. And I think those observations, while maybe
Accurate.
true, right? With, the missed opportunity is the curiosity piece. With, tell me what it was like for you. But that's terrifying as a parent,
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah.
Oh, that's the role that you feel I played. Whether I played it or not, I'm listening. And maybe I have to leave open the possibility that that's the way that it was. What are you thinking? You close your eyes to take that in.
Oh, it's just sad. Such a missed opportunity for him to really connect with you
Yeah.
instead of avoiding your pain, which is what he did. He wasn't open to having his story challenged the way he said it,
Yeah.
and that basically, like, I was good. There's something wrong with you.
Yeah, because it would come along with, well, I did a pretty good job raising all of you.
Yeah.
Look how everybody's turned out.
Right.
And it was all about what career they had
Right.
to him.
Right.
And then I also remember, because he wasn't, like, my oldest sister cut off contact. She'd had all she could do.
Yeah.
And him saying, I did nothing wrong. And he believed nothing
I
wrong.
believe you. Yeah. He needed to believe that.
And my point being that it takes a lot of courage, but if you want to have a stronger relationship with your siblings or your children or your parent,
Yeah.
engaging along those lines and doing it the way you're talking about, at least for starters, right? Not only can create a deeper relationship, but the healing that could come. If my dad had said, what was it like for you? And we had that kind of conversation,
Right.
the healing that he could have, created if he was non-reactive, non-judgmental in the process, right?
Yeah.
Tremendous. So missed opportunity for him and for me.
Yeah.
So I need to make sure I have a conversation like that with my daughter so I can do better. He did the best. What I know is he was doing the best he knew how to do. He just didn't know very much,
And he wasn't very brave.
Yeah, I think that's true. Being vulnerable was not part of the agenda. And vulnerability, I want to make this point too really clear, because I think people could be resistant to it. Being vulnerable does not mean you're weak.
Right.
When you say it takes courage, it's because you're strong enough to take whatever comes back when you ask the question.
Right.
And to hold space that whether it's all true or it's just their truth, and respect it. That takes strength.
Yeah.
So I hope we can all be strong and have courage to try.
Yeah. I think being brave is, it's a word I've used for decades. Life is complex. Opportunities are always in front of us. Will we step into the unknown, or will we not? And we know how hard it is. I mean, we talk about that often in the work that we do with people, whether directly in the therapy room or on retreat. We're trying to develop enough resilience in our body that being brave doesn't feel like it'll kill us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you balance those efforts with peace? Does that make sense to you?
Tell me more.
Sometimes just being, and here's the thing. We all want, I don't know about everybody else, but what I want or have wanted in the past is let's everybody get along and just enjoy what it is that we're doing, or just in the sitting and enjoying the evening, the sunset, whatever it might be. And that's a lovely space to be in. And so, there's peace in that, in the just sitting next to people that you love.
Yeah.
Right. And there may be all kinds of complications, but there can still be that peace. But if that's all you ever do, then you haven't extended any curiosity to see what it could be or to heal hurts, even just by the other person speaking their truth. And so how do you balance? Can't always be, well, let's, you know what I'm saying? Maybe I'm not saying it very well. How do you balance this being curious with allowing the peace of just being together to be there too?
Oh, man, I think every family situation would be so different. I mean, it's interesting because I think, did the effort that we all put into that weekend allow that to just happen more naturally? That's what I believe, because I'm thinking, do we put effort in now to like mix it up? I don't think so. We can sit and have, deep conversation. We can sit and have, playful, just hanging out. We can, yeah. I mean, I think it made it easier to just be, if someone needs more, like we can do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess, if you're curious, it doesn't always have to be a super serious conversation.
Absolutely,
And if you
yeah.
are going along the spectrum like so many things, right? That the peace and the ease comes along with that process because you have put it out there on the table.
Yeah, and it's not playing a role of curiosity, right? It's really genuinely being curious.
Yeah.
And so, if you see someone's demeanor being off, or if they're more quiet, allowing that, I just don't know that we're very truly observant. I mean, I think some of us are ultra observant. But I don't want to be ultra observant all the time. Right. Yeah. And the reality is I'm probably less observant with my siblings. Yeah. Just because they're so familiar. Yeah. So familiar. But so it depends on the space that I'm in, as well. But I do think that if it was not going to be so smooth as ours, I feel like, happened, it would probably take more than one session of spending that time together, right? Really sitting down, and it's like, what can we each manage at any particular point? And then are we willing for it to be different 6 months later and 6 months later and 6 months later, because we like the known, we like certainty so much. We could have had that sibling get together and then renegotiated rules and then just held on to the new rules, whatever we decided the new rules were, right? And that's not what I'm talking about. And so, are we willing to start an evolution of our relationships? And so, if people need that additional structure, I think you then have to be open to renegotiating what that looks like. Maybe for some people, they need their next 15 times together to be more serious, to create more safety. Maybe some siblings need to work on their relationship together because there's so much pain between the two of them. I mean, I think that's the benefit of, having a therapist come in, for guidance. I mean, some people just don't have any tools.
Yeah.
Any. I mean, I don't know that weekend would have gone so well had I not been a therapist for 13 years prior, right? And my siblings, I think, have a decent idea of who I am, now, and they know that I'm not pushing anything other than healthier relationship and allowing us to all be in different places. So, yeah, do we need to dive in deep, and then the next 4 times we need to just sit out by a fire and bullshit? Maybe, I think every system is going to have different needs. Yeah. And if you can't figure it out in your system, then find a really good family therapist to help you create some structure and compassion. And yeah, that's what I think.
Sure. There's great opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely, there is.
Yeah.
And before we wrap up, because I'm guessing we're close.
We are.
Yeah. The sibling that we don't see, that made a choice to not be in relationship with us. I mean, I'm still hopeful.
Yeah.
That someday they'll make a different choice, and whatever, their life experience has been, because they weren't there that day. This was after that. After they had severed their relationship with us is when we had this gathering. It's what prompted, actually, the gathering. For me, I was like, okay, there's obviously stuff that we really don't understand about each other, so let's do this. I also respect her choice, even if I don't like it, that it is what she feels like she needs for herself, regardless of the reason. And I know the times that she's, has reached out to a few of my siblings. Again, I think it's been a long time, but they were very welcoming. My youngest sister put a tremendous amount of effort into welcoming her into her home, remodeling her basement to give her space. I think my brother and I contributed financially to the remodeling, and so it's not like when the few times she's reached out, she's been met with rejection. She's been met with welcome. But again, we're just not that simple. And my guess is there is an incredibly tremendous amount that we do not know about her life.
Sure.
And we may never know about her life. Yeah. And so, yeah, it's tricky.
Yeah. I feel this longing, and a pain.
Mm-hmm.
This pain associated with that is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Even with a relationship that has been distant for years, I can feel that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Again, we all have different perspectives of how things were. And I think there are a lot of things about her, that she saw, I don't know, more clearly. I mean, I remember her saying to me before I got married the first time, "Why would you marry someone that you fight with all the time?" And I was like, "We don't fight all the time." She's like, "You do." And I was like, "I don't think so." We did. But I think growing up in our household, for me, it was so, normalized that I had become desensitized to it. Does that make sense? But she hadn't. And so she saw that more clearly than I did. Yeah. Anyway.
Maybe if she'd presented it in a different, the tone that you used, that judgmental kind of.
Oh, for sure. Oh, yeah, we
snarky
were young. I mean, I would have been like 20, she would have been 21 or 22. Yeah, no doubt. It's like, you don't know. Yeah, you don't know me. You don't know my life.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure it would have been.
Just another example of a different approach could have generated a different response, but maybe not given your ages.
Yeah, it's hard to know in family situation, but being curious, I believe on some level, absolutely would have been more helpful. I think it is more helpful.
Yeah.
I just don't know that we know how to do it. We definitely come across with more judgment and shaming, making fun of, teasing, whatever, putting down. I mean, then, yeah. But we did plenty of putting down of her when she was young.
Yeah.
Yeah, which was allowed and not okay. But it was what my parents grew up with too, and it wasn't a cycle they broke. I was a cycle I broke.
Right.
Yes. Do not allow my children to treat each other that way.
Right.
Yeah. Do not allow them to hit each other, hold each other down, tickle each other, punch each other. Just wasn't allowed. So, yeah. Relationships. So complex.
So complex and so capable of being made better.
Absolutely. Different. I mean, they can just be different. I'll finish with this story. So last weekend, my youngest son and his friends came over to play D&D. And one of them was having a rough day. And I could hear it. And I don't normally, I'm not usually engaged. I don't go check on my kids when they have friends over. Like, I don't. It's just not me. And I was hearing, some stress down there. But I really wasn't paying much attention to it until I heard someone suffering. And as soon as I heard suffering, like my body engages and I have to react. And, I didn't grow up. I mean, I grew up with that, but I haven't had that in so long because I didn't allow that amongst them that I don't hear that. Mm-hmm. And so it was so shocking to me. And I jump up and I run downstairs and my son is holding down his friend. And I, yell loudly and very out of character to get the fuck off of him. And he's like, what? Like he's startled because he's doing what he thinks he's supposed to be doing because his friend was really getting out of control and was, I guess, shoving people around and potentially breaking things and, whatever. And, for me, I don't care about things like the things like if he had punched a hole in the wall or if he had broken something, like I wouldn't have liked it, but I wouldn't have had any big overreaction to it. And so for me, it was, if someone is not acting right in your house, you ask them to leave or you tell them to leave. You have to leave my house. And my expectation is if that had not worked, that you just call the police and have them make you leave your house. Like you don't jack around with the boundary. You should hold the boundary. But again, we've never had that in our house, even with having 3 boys and a lot of boys over. Like we had never had a situation like that before. And, and my son was surprised because he thought he was doing what he needed to do or like to protect the house and the other people. And, what I always go to is you never know what someone else's trauma is, ever. And so for me, you don't restrain people like that. And, for me, it is really like an energetic piece that's more important than this physical piece that we have been taught to do or whatever. And Luke's a second-degree black belt. And so, his capability is significant. And he's an athlete. And he works out all the time. And, for me, that, the young man was like, I'm leaving. I'm never coming back. I'm never talking to you guys. And he goes upstairs. And I say to Luke, you now go apologize to him for restraining him now. And he went up there and I said something to the people that were, the other kids that were there. And I call them kids, young adults. And they were like, oh, yeah, like we all grew up in rough households. Like that's normal. We were just trying to keep things from getting broken. And I was like, oh, it was just so hard, to hear how normal that was for all those other kids. And then I go upstairs and, Luke and, the young man are out on the front porch and, the energy is still high. But Luke doesn't want to harm anyone. In listening to him, hold space, accept responsibility for his part, be curious with him. And they were out there for an hour. And they were going to come back inside. And I couldn't hear everything that they were saying. But I could hear the tone change. I could feel the energy change. And the young man was worried that I'd be upset with him, when he came back in and they came back in. And I just said, this isn't how I raised my children. I understand that Luke did what he thought he needed to do. I don't want you harming things in my house, but it's more important to me that you don't harm people. I have a hanging kicking bag in the other side of the basement, and so should you come over again and you're feeling that out of control, my expectation is that you go let your energy out on that bag. And if you need help, just ask for it. And he was like, okay. It was a really powerful experience of the shift of energy that can happen when we go towards someone, right, who is struggling, regardless of the choices that they were making. And I'm not saying this works in all situations, right?
Right.
Because sometimes it may not be safe.
Right.
And it's possible that may not have been safe, but it was. But they both allowed the space. They both were open enough, even with the level of distress they were both in, to allow perspective, curiosity, change in story, compassion, understanding, connection. And then the young man said, I just need to go because I need to go sleep. That's really the best thing for me to do right now.
Okay.
Which was really mature and
I
responsible
agree.
Despite
Sensing it.
And for Luke to allow that as well, right? Not try to rescue, but to trust that his friend knew what he needed to, right? And Luke's regret not taking over the situation, right? And needing, again, to rescue. And then they hugged, big connected hug, when he left. If we could learn how to do that, right? What was most important to Luke once he got out of protector mode? What was it?
Relationship.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the end result could be far different. Fine, get the F out of here.
Right.
Or nothing.
Right. Healthy relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want healthy relationship. I don't think everybody wants healthy relationships. Some people just want relationship or connection or non-abandonment, right? But you have to want healthy relationship. What are you thinking?
Even if it was the end of the relationship, the reaching out before it got the attempt, even. Let's say that it was non-responsive for more aggression, out on the porch, fine. And he storms off and Luke stumps in, right? That still that reaching out, I think, it lays the groundwork, plants the seed for healing at some level, whether the relationship ended or not, right? Because at some point, whether it's some night, 20 years from then, somebody may wake up in the night and it occurs to them,
Right. Right.
That was an opportunity. And I did the best I could, and actually the end result is okay, but it just creates an example and a space for healing. Anyway, that's it, all of it.
Yeah, and just reinforcing, it was obviously something they both chose, right? Because one of them could have chosen it, and it wouldn't have ended like it did, but they both chose healthy relationship. Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway,
That's
I know.
maybe our longest
Wrapping
one
it up.
yet.
Yeah. No, I think we're good. We're good.
I love you.
I love
Thanks.
you too. Thanks, babe. Thank you for joining us today. We are excited to explore life with you. We encourage curiosity, self-growth, and we strive to be more compassionate every day.